Great. Well, okay, now I get to introduce our next speaker. Lift that up. Our next speaker is Geoff Stone. Geoff has studied psychology, philosophy, and economics extensively at University of Toronto. He's always up for a philosophical discussion. He's the regular host of Sunday Tea with Cafe. He's a producer of content for his popular YouTube channel. Now this is news to me. I'm looking forward to that. How do you pronounce it?
ST37.
ST371.
Terrible name. I can't change.
And he's a volunteer with Cafe, has been for 4 years, and a board member for 3 years. So please join me in welcoming Geoff.
It's quite an honor to be introduced by Janice via Mango, who also has a great YouTube channel. I don't remember, what do you call the channel? Via Mango Flap, right. Very funny, very entertaining. I don't know if you intend it to be funny, but it is. I just don't want to be a hunchback, so. Okay, so you can see the title of Humor, Truth, and Relational Aggression. How do these fit together? I'm going to start off with a little game. Next slide. Anyone who has the power to make you believe absurdities has the power to make you commit injustices. Who said that? Does anybody know? You in the back. No, sorry.
Geoff Stone.
No. Yes. Who coined it, I should say. All right, next slide. Who's this guy? Does anyone know who he is? I just forgot his name. Oh yeah, Voltaire, right? Okay. Okay, next quote. I always made one prayer to God, a very short one. Here it is. Oh Lord, make our enemies quite ridiculous. God granted it. Who said that? Anybody have a guess? No, sorry. Next slide. That's right. Voltaire. Okay, next quote. A witty saying proves nothing. Does anyone who said that one?
Voltaire.
Hey, all right, you guys are catching on. Okay, next slide. What is oppression sound like? Does anybody have an idea? Because I think I know. Sounds like right? It sounds like a laughter, which is kind of like a punchy sound, like a face getting punched with a brick, right? It's terrible. I mean, I think personally that what we need to do is, next slide, we want to create a better world, less oppressive world, more safe world by getting rid of laughter, because it's pretty clear to me nothing positive comes from laughter. That's the sound that the arrogant alpha dominant male makes while he's displaying his dominance, right? It's the very essence of privilege. But yet, our culture promotes it, it normalizes it. We just take it for granted as a good thing, which, to my mind, proves like that we totally live in a patriarchy. And further evidence, I see jokes, I hear them all the time that promote violence against women. I'm not going to repeat any of them because that would promote violence against women, obviously. Okay, next slide. Okay, I was just kidding. Obviously, this is pro-humor lecture, not some, it's not that kind of lecture. What do I mean by this slide? Life's hard, so go suck a lemon? No. You make life's hard lemonade, right? That's what you do with humor, right? Humor can help you to turn a lemon into Mike's Hard Lemonade, or it can take Mike's Hard Lemonade and turn it into humor, right? It's kind of a bad analogy though, I think, because there's sugar in there and alcohol. That's not exactly good for you, but whatever. Humor is good for you. Next slide. Okay. The lemon, as I see it very often, is something called relational aggression, and I have an example just recently from this weekend where we caught wind of an email that was sent out. There was a pretext, a threat narrative about a threat against, an anonymous online threat against feminists, could have been posted by anyone, doesn't actually target anyone specifically, and they're using that as something to rally behind, and that was what sort of set the tone of the email, suggesting there's a danger, and specifically naming cafe as a danger. And I'll just read a little bit from it. Calling us MRAs, and saying MRAs and men's issues is the same thing. They say that the reality, however, is that MRAs on campus are not interested in positive activism, which is the theme of our conference, right? Instead, they stalk, harass, and attack feminists, keep women's voices on the margins, and blame women for making men's lives miserable by refusing to submit to the ideas and demands of the larger MRA project. Groups that promote patriarchy and misogyny have no place at a university that claims to support and protect women. They have no place at a university that claims that violence against women is despicable. They have no place at a university that claims that every opportunity to condemn misogyny must be taken. With this in mind, the Women's Caucus has extended an invitation to university provost and vice president. I edited out some of the names because it doesn't really matter. To see how we can work together on these issues. Sounds positive, right? Anyway, my point in this is that this is an example of social aggression. The whole point is to exclude a group that they don't like. And then the reason doesn't really matter so much. The point is, you have to choose between either we're with you and supporting, we have a friendship, or we don't, because as long as they're there, there's going to be problems with us. This is right. Next slide. What is relational aggression? It's also known as indirect aggression because it's not very openly open usually. It's sort of behind the scenes. And because you don't attack someone directly, you attack their relationships. It's also called social aggression for all these reasons. And sometimes female bullying because it's much more common amongst females, or it used to be in school. And my sisters both went through it. It involves backstabbing, slander, gossip, covert ostracism, drama, false accusations, and just general threat narratives. And the victim does not always know who the perpetrator is. The goal is to socially alienate the target through sabotaging their relationships, even perhaps their career. And they often use ultimatums. If you want to be my friend, then you can't be friends with someone. It's highly conspiratorial. I would think that anyone who has to go through it would become very paranoid quickly. And it's sort of a characteristic of what they call frenemies, right? You don't really know who your friends are, who your enemies are. It can switch very quickly. You keep your enemies close, right? And it just overall creates a very toxic and hostile environment. And I'm going to speculate a little bit about the causes of that later. But I'd say it's very traumatizing. I mean, anyone who's lost all their friends would have some issues to deal with, we think. And they do. And it's also, I'm going to talk a little bit about the cause here. It's caused by competition for status and power, just like all aggression. Also for security, right? Because the best offense is or best defense is a good offense, right? It's basically just about power, status, and security and attention. So who do you blame for that? Really nobody, because it's its own phenomenon. Once it starts to dominate over a group, there's nothing really you can do to stop it. Or there may not be. I'm going to talk about one way you might stop it. But next slide. People usually look at personality disorders as maladaptive. Of course, in abnormal psychology, we always everything that's studied as abnormal as a disorder, it's a rare thing, it's not normal, and it's not helpful, right? But there may be, I'm going to suggest, some possible advantages or a possible interplay between social aggression and some personality disorders. So namely borderline personality, histrionic, and narcissistic personality. So, next slide. The borderline, to understand the borderline, their condition stems from their fear of abandonment. That's a very exaggerated fear of abandonment. And they're emotionally intense and very emotionally unstable. They're hypersensitive to rejection. They are characterized by unstable relationships with lots of flipping back and forth between love and hate and black and white thinking. And they tend to be clingy. And I just threw this in at the end that I speculate maybe they use sex to maintain a relationship since that's what's most important to them, right? Just clinging on. And this can easily be caused by having your friends abandon you, right? And I think also that this would fuel social aggression because it gives people who use social aggression power over you if you happen to suffer from this. Next slide. Histrionic personality disorder. To understand histrionic, you have to understand they have excessive feelings of boredom. That pretty much explains where this is coming from. They're addicted to drama, so they probably fit in very well in a socially aggressive environment. They probably love being there, otherwise they'd be bored. They're attention seekers, they're highly suggestible to, once they get an idea in their head, they believe it. And I'm suggesting here that they use sex to relieve boredom because that would be consistent with their personality. Next slide, please. Narcissistic personality disorder. To understand the narcissist, you need to understand that they're based around intense feelings of envy. And envy, by the way, is the opposite of compassion, right? Other people are doing well, you're not happy. When other people are doing unhappy, you're happy. That's what envy is basically. To a narcissist, status is everything, and truth is nothing. They're profoundly fake. They're allergic to reality. And they'll lash out at anyone who threatens their sense of identity, what they say about themselves. And they're hypocrites. And they're ruthless social climbers. And they will tend to rise to the top of a socially aggressive environment. Next slide, please. The Queen Bee. Anybody seen the movie Mean Girls? I saw it like 15 years ago or 10 years ago or something. Okay. So everyone knows who the Queen Bee is in that group. That's the leader, right? They decide who's in, who's out. Who does everyone hate? Who does everyone like? Everyone likes her, right? Well, they have to pretend to. Social aggression can also be used as a political tactic if you want to, attack your enemies. You don't have to use guns. You can use, destroy their relationships, isolate them, ruin their reputation, that kind of thing. Just make them look bad. It's also can be an effective way to promote ideologies. Any ideology you want to, you can probably use social aggression to benefit that ideology at the expense of any other ideology. I also want to mention that this is an important point. Magic is the art of deception, right? It's a fair definition. And we all know what witches in popular culture do, right? They cast spells, they, can control perceptions because they use magic. They can turn you into a frog or an ogre or something ugly and disgusting looking, right? You could, regardless of whether or not Gomeshi is innocent, in a certain sense, the media, who brought us the stories about Gomeshi, can actually turn him into a frog because he might try and say, no, I'm not a frog, but all people hear is ribbit, 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 right? He's actually transformed in a real sense because our perception is now changed. So, next slide, please. Why do we have laughter? Does anybody ever wonder about that? It's kind of mysterious. I think I have some clues, though. I can shed some light here. Clue number one is that laughter is, if you look at it objectively, it's like a fully blossoming smile. It's just the most intense expression of happiness that you're capable of, right? You just can't hold it back. You smile first, and then it just erupts, kind of like the way crying erupts from a frown, right? So we know it has something to do with happiness and the communication of happiness. Clue number two, our great ape cousins, they're ticklish. They play fight with each other. They make somewhat laughing-like sounds when they tickle each other. And lots of animals make laughter-like sounds when they play fight. So we can tell from that it has something to do with a challenge, perhaps, with conflict, with learning and experimenting, with youth, and with learning and trial and error. Next slide, please. What about our uniquely human sense of humor? We're very smart animals. We always think of our sense of humor as being unique. Objective DNA analysis implies that humans are closest to the chimpanzees and bonobos, but there are a few researchers actually have argued that the fossil record implies that orangutans are our closest cousins. But there's video evidence, I'm going to go much further and say that orangutans are actually human because we have something in common with them, something incredible. Right? Looks very human. So that tells you something about laughter. It's the covering of deception. It's the uncovering of magic. It's seeing the hidden truth. It's learning. So next slide, please. Researchers Daniel Dennett, who maybe some of you are familiar with, along with Matthew Hurley and Reginald Adams, contend that humor is about problem solving, real practical problem solving. And it's a reward mechanism that's designed to encourage us to detect and avoid faulty reasoning. We enjoy new insights, we enjoy the exposure of misconceptions, of deception and fraud, of pretenses, or just bringing awareness to social taboos that we might not be aware of, and also hypocrisy and important truths that are easily missed. So it basically empowers and liberates the mind from all this confusion and misinformation that surrounds us. And that's why life is a constant learning experience. There's so much misconceptions out there. We have to constantly learn. Comedians are always making interesting observations about life. Have you ever noticed this? Have you ever noticed that? And that's what makes it so funny. They're noticing important truths. And have you ever noticed that you never hear anyone say, what could possibly go wrong? Except ironically, right? What could possibly go wrong? No one says that, right? It's a hindsight kind of thing, and it's always in the context of humor, right? Obviously something's going to go wrong. Also, when we tell jokes, when we hear a joke too many times, it starts to get old. Our sense of humor matures as we learn more, right? And after we've heard the same lesson a few times, it's no longer useful, right? So why would we need to laugh? Why would we need to enjoy it? It's just boring. Next. Same slide. Okay, go back, please. Thank you. We sometimes laugh when things don't go according to plan, right? It doesn't have to be a joke. It's just something happened in our life, and it's maybe tragic. But if we can see the learning experience, like maybe things didn't go as bad as they could have gone, as long as there's a learning experience that we get on some deep level, we can laugh about it. Whereas there is a sort of a balancing act between the feelings of joy that we get from learning and the sadness from having things not go according to plan, or the anxiety that not being able to predict, the outcomes of your actions will provoke in people. So if you're very neurotic, and I'd say, you know, imagine an animal that is very neurotic and has no sense of humor. The other animals try and play fight with it. Well, what would it do? It wouldn't have a sense of humor. It would think it's really being attacked. It would maybe, you know, stew and plot against it. Maybe when the animal goes to sleep, they'll try and kill it or something, right? That's why it's important to have a sense of humor. So, we can also learn from the mistakes of others, right? It's not nice to laugh at the misfortune of someone else, but I think the reason we do that is because we're learning from what they did, the stupid mistake they made. Healthy versus unhealthy humor. I use a food analogy for this. Humor is revolutionary. The powers that be always have an uneasy relationship with humor, but can it be co-opted? I think perhaps. I know, for example, we just take it as a common sense that unhealthy food tastes good, and if it tastes bad, it's probably healthy for you. That's not natural, right? That's a product of our technology, the fact that we're so good at manipulating food that most of what we eat is a lie, right? So it's like our instincts are lying to us. Could the same thing happen to humor? Possibly. We have canned laughter for sitcoms, which induces us to laugh even though the joke might not be funny, just because we think other people find it funny, even though we know it's canned laughter. That conformity can sometimes be hijacked. And a lot of the commercials we see, which are just propaganda, or just trying to sell a product, they are quite funny, aren't they? Fortunately, humor has a way of circumventing our ideological defenses. So, you know, you might be brainwashed or really prepared to avoid certain ideas. Humor has a way of sneaking up on you and getting around that and hitting you, right? Sorry, can you change the slide? That's right. Thank you. It also sometimes gives us permission to violate taboos, to be weird, to be different, to be innovative. Comedians are never normal and conventional, right? Next slide, please. Humor is also, I'd say, more difficult to hijack than other instincts, because to hijack an instinct, you have to separate the appearance from the reality, right? You have to create confusion. And I think that humor, because it involves appreciation between appearance and reality, is sort of naturally self-correcting. At least that's what I hope. So our sense of humor should be robust. And I think that to promote the truth, if that's what you want to do, if you have truth on your side, or if you want to promote truth and spread it, the ideal thing to do would be to hit that sweet spot between comedy and philosophy. So that, you know, what we should use the food analogy. A great chef wants to produce food that tastes great and is nutritious. Right? So you don't want just one or the other, or put it together. That's how you get the most effect. Next slide, please. Everyone knows Saturday Night Live. They're a pretty mainstream comedy outfit. They tried to be funny. One time, what's her name again? Oh yeah, Lena Dunham was the host, and they had this sketch called the Jewelry Party, which basically the premise is this guy comes in with his girlfriend. They're asking him, "What do you do?" And he's very vague about it. He doesn't want to say, "Oh, I'm a grassroots activist." They find out he's a men's rights activist. And then what happens is they proceed to get very angry, and his girlfriend dumps him, and he's humiliated, and he's kicked out of the party. Pretty funny, right? No, the audience didn't find it funny. No, nobody laughed. And because you have to buy into it at some level, you have to believe that it's real. You have to believe that it's enlightening. And if it's just like a threatening message saying, well, I mean, I can see the humor behind it. The humor is, ha ha ha, don't be a men's rights activist. And if you are, don't let anyone find out. That was a bad idea, right? That's the humor. But I think that kind of shows that you can't easily corrupt humor. You can't use it to support your agenda. We have a natural defense. Next slide, please. How are we doing?
5 minutes.
Really? Okay, I think I'll I think I'll skip the next couple slides here.
15 minutes.
So, 15 minutes? Okay. Yeah, right. Okay. Skip that slide, please. Yeah, next slide. Yes, that's something I want to talk about. So, just one thing that I've been thinking for a long time, and some other people have been thinking this too, is that our main challenge is not so much bringing facts to people's attention, it's not so much raising awareness or correcting misconceptions. It's more of a social phenomenon, what I'm calling meta-awareness, which is just the awareness that other people are aware. Because what our opposition has been doing very successfully, and part of the tricks that they use is to convince us of this, is to say that they are everyone, they are what's normal, and they're everyone, and you're all alone in your feelings and your beliefs. Right? There is no opposition. So they try and make us feel isolated, alone, and vulnerable, and that creates a self-fulfilling prophecy. We act, we stay in the closet, we hide, right? And it's an illusion. So, the reality is, from just what I've experienced from interacting with people, from being on the street, is that most people are very strongly supportive of, say, CAFE, what we stand for, and they think it's about time. Maybe about 5 to 10% are really opposed to us, but they're not just slightly opposed; they will explode. And then most people are kind of uncertain. They might go either way. They just don't know. That they're not even really interested or curious. But you wouldn't know it, right? You'd think that most people are against us, right? It's not true. So I use the Emperor's New Clothes. I think that's a good analogy. If anyone knows the story, basically the Emperor is naked, and everyone can see they're naked, but everyone pretends that they're wearing nice, beautiful clothes, and they're complimenting them because they don't want to be the only person who sees the truth. And then this little kid who's totally innocent, breaks that by pointing out the obvious truth, laughing. And I think laughter can help, right? How to reduce the perceived power and credibility of someone is partly by laughing at them, by showing that you don't believe what they're trying to tell you, that you think it's bullshit. So, basically, I want to point out that there is safety in numbers. So, if everyone just comes out of the closet, that makes it a lot easier. There's no one to target and specifically attack, right? So obviously we need to organize and recruit and build vibrant networks, which is what we're doing. And to always remember that humor is useful for combating fear, because let's face it, being attacked is pretty scary. Humiliating frauds, of course, winning over the crowd, breaking taboos, because sometimes the truth is taboo, and also avoiding conflict. Sometimes, if you make your opponent laugh, they're not going to be as aggressive, and just enjoying what you're doing. But there's some cautions. Next slide, please. Some of the topics we deal with, such as suicide, parental alienation, which is kind of a form of relational aggression, domestic violence, sexual abuse, false allegations. None of these are humor friendly, really, right? They're so depressing. And there's a risk that you will be perceived as insensitive or lacking in compassion if you joke around in close proximity to these topics. So that's just one caution. Because the thing is, when you're laughing and you're happy, obviously you can't be compassionate. That's not compatible with feeling someone else's pain. And also, if you want to be taken seriously and be professional and credible, you have to avoid joking around too much. Otherwise, people might think you're a troll, like we've been called trolls before. They might think you're insincere or just irresponsible, and that you don't care about your own credibility. And I also want to caution about the fact that humor sometimes really can be mean-spirited, and a lot of times people are very aggressive and they hide it behind "I was just joking." And that's not a good idea. Don't be aggressive and mean-spirited. Instead, focus on just highlighting misconceptions, keeping people honest, and encouraging the free exchange of ideas. And that concludes my talk. And now for questions.
Yeah, just real quick, I often notice myself that a lot of guys use self-deprecating comedy, and I'm just wondering if you have any insight into why that is.
I use self-deprecating comedy a lot. I guess it's a good way to show that you're humble, right? So, and it can be really funny because it shows that if you don't take yourself too seriously, and that if you can make fun of yourself, then you don't mind it so much. And I don't know. That's a good question. I don't really have a full answer.
Yeah, I just have a comment about the Emperor Has No Clothes. Of course, the reason why it's a fairy tale is in real life, the kid would have the crap beaten out of him by the guards, right? And in the fairy tale, everyone gets enlightened, and that happens a lot more rarely in real life.
I think just the reason I want to use that as an example is that's what I think is going on a lot of the time, where everyone feels alone. It's just an illusion. They're keeping their thoughts to themselves, thinking they're the only one. And part of the reason we know that we're not alone is because of the internet. It's so easy to communicate and interact. And you can see, I mean, when a newspaper publishes an article that has a certain bias, you think, oh, okay, that's what people believe. But if you see it in the internet in an article, and you see all the comments, and you see they're all like 99% critical, you think, well, I guess no one's buying it then. Right? I guess I'm not alone. Next question.
Hi, so your mention of humor, it does tend to dissolve tension in situations. As far as I can tell, the best audience to reach would be not the people who are basically trying to take the fun out of things, but more those who are watching, the ones who haven't made the decision yet, the ones who are trying to understand. I've tried humor. It doesn't work. It's just, there's a level that's just lost. Have you had the experience yourself?
Well, I tried humor today, and I don't know if it worked that well. It's not easy, that's for sure. I mean,
Yeah.
I guess what I'm trying to say is you don't have to try. The truth is funny, and as long as you're curious and you're honest, I think it's easy to be naturally funny. I think, you know, people drink and they tend to get more funny because they just sort of loosen up and they relax and they just spill things out. And that's, you know, it happens naturally. It's not that much. You can learn tricks about how to be funny, but I think it just happens naturally, and that's how it should be. Yeah.
I'd love your analysis of laughter and its effects on learning. But what about nervous laughter? You never really got into the other elements of laughter.
Yeah, I think sometimes the laughter can be fake. There's, you know, go ahead.
Not even fake so much, but laughter as in what some people would consider a juxtapositional response to grief or anxiety or trauma.
Well, you can tell the difference between nervous laughter and you know, more pure laughter and real laughter, right? You can tell it's a little bit different. I'm not sure why people do the nervous laughter. I think it's maybe an effort to hide their nervousness. So, you know, and I'm pretty sure that one of the key indicators of a narcissist is that they have this fake laugh that anyone who hears them knows it's a fake laugh, but they do it all the time. So I just thought that's something someone to say. Anyway, does that answer your question?
I have one question, but maybe I should do it.
Sure. Yeah, so everyone can hear the question.
It's a very simple question. And perhaps you already answered it. Geoff, you surely noticed in the kind of movie paradigm when the bad guy, the mafia hitman, the terrorist who's about to blow somebody up, at that particular moment, when he confronts his victim, who is helpless most of the time, unless he happens to be the hero of the film, what he does is he laughs. It's a kind of sly, insinuating, but hugely self-enjoyment type of laugh, and it often involves a certain witticism, perhaps a pun of some kind or other. You think you lucked out, eh, man? You really did. You lucked out. That's it. You should be lucking in, right? Why is it then? Why does Hollywood think that way, or perhaps we think that way? That laughter seems to pertain not only to conflicts, tensions, and release of tension. That's one theory of laughter, right? That there is a tension, as you said, between reality and appearance, or between two different possibilities. You can't really balance them in your mind, but when the moment comes, the punchline, so to speak, tension is released, and it's almost a physical, kind of what the Greeks would call the themos, reacting, and tension is released. Is that what happens to the bad guy in the film when he makes his pun and has to laugh as he's about to pull the trigger?
I don't know about the explanation of the release of tension. It doesn't explain laughter to me at all. I really like Dennett's theory. I think it kind of explains like the content a bit more, what makes it funny, as opposed to just a release of tension, because tension can mean, like, there can be different types of tension. I don't know. Actually, what was the question? Is that
What do you think produces it? Why is it that
That-
that's almost appropriate when you're watching a movie and you see the bad guy about to blow someone away, and he has to laugh at that very moment or make some kind of witticism? There is a kind of humor at work there. We call it black humor. How do you explain that?
it's? I would say it's sort of misanthropic hatred of humanity, maybe, or just, like the Joker in The Dark Knight, who loves chaos. He likes when people's plans fall apart. He really enjoys that. He doesn't seem to. He's a psychopath. He doesn't seem to feel the fear or the sadness. He just gets the laughter part, right? So maybe that's it. He doesn't have any shame or fear,
What
which in
does,
some ways is good.
what does Jack Nicholson really express when he's trashing music? Why is he laughing? What is it?
Well,
Joy.
a psychopath, I guess, would be somewhat different from most normal people, right? So it's probably a normal human trait that's been warped, twisted, I think. So it's not.
The
You
same
wouldn't.
derivative of that nervous laughter we were talking about earlier, essentially an adverse reaction to trauma.
Perhaps. Or you would laughing when, it's an expression of happiness. So if that's, if something would motivate someone to do something that terrible, it must be they must get something out of it. They must enjoy it. That's what laughter basically expresses, is enjoyment, happiness, for the most part. I don't know, it's a little too deep for me, actually, quite frankly. Next question?
Yeah, I'd like to get back to the relational aggression part of your presentation, which I found most interesting, although the humorous part was humorous. In fact, there's a situation I'm going through right now, which in a way I find funny, but I can't really laugh at. I'm a lawyer, and a complaint has been launched against me at the Law Society. Now, the allegations are very, in fact, I find them very funny, but it's a very serious matter nonetheless. And I'm forced to compare that to a lot of the communications I see out there, which relate to this relational aggression that you see from these groups out there, including feminists, where it's what they call cry bullying, I think. Mm-hmm. They are the authors of things that are not right, and yet they blame everybody else for it. And so in this particular case, I took in a case, I was working for my client, and next thing you know, I'm the bad guy, and so they're reversing it on me. Where does that fit in within your narcissistic or your other categories you had there? And what do you have to say about that? Should we just laugh about those things?
Depends what you want to do about it, right? If there's nothing you can do about it, maybe that could be laughter. They say is the best medicine, and maybe if you just need to heal, I mean, if there's, it's a hard question to answer, but it really, I'd say, depends on what you want to do about it and what your plan of action is, right? Because you probably don't want to just laugh. You probably want to help yourself or help fix the problem.
I guess what I'm saying is not necessarily, like I gave the example with me personally, but out there, when you're caught in these situations of cry bullying against you, whatever situation, presumably there's some ways to interact with whatever the presentation gave. I'm just wondering give me some insight.
If you just laugh and you have the attitude of laughing, then you can show other people that you get the joke and that there is a joke to get, and that it's a very deep instinctual thing that other people will pick up on, and you can spread this idea.
Okay, and then do like Jack Nicholson.
No. Don't act like you're crazy and you laugh at everything and think everything's funny. Because if you're really twisted, you have a twisted sense of humor, right? I think humor gives you a good insight into how the mind works and what could be wrong with the mind. Right? If you have too much of a sense of humor, there's something wrong. And if you don't have any sense of humor, there's something wrong.
Hi again. I just wanted to explain a little bit how I perceive laughter as being. There's a point where a story is being told. People are anticipating that there's going to be a punchline. And that moment when things are explained in just the right way, something just clicks in the head. And then it releases the endorphin, and people laugh. And for the example like you gave of the Joker, he'll be talking, I'm like a dog chasing cars. And he has the ha-ha, little laughter. And the reason for that is because he already knows the punchline. And when somebody is doing something maniacal and they're laughing maniacally, or if they're about to do something, a lot of it has to do with the tension that comes with it, but also knowing the punchline. And it's a feeling of wanting to tell a joke. You already know what it is, but people get that pleasure out of doing it. And not only are they giving out truths, which I think is exactly why that Saturday Night Live skit didn't work, because it wasn't true. They have that level of tension. So for them, once they get it out, wanting to get the right comedic timing, that relieves the tension for them. And for them, they have that laugh that goes with other people, which sounds more like the nervous laugh. So yeah, that's all I can say.
Okay. Yeah, relieving tension, I guess, can mean different things, but I think of it as relieving the distinction between appearance and reality, right? Or you have two contradictory narratives crossing, and then the punchline resolves it. Now you know the truth. And now you see how things fit. You get a flash of insight, and it makes you laugh. That's a kind of relief of tension, right? Two counter narratives, then you figure out which one's true, or something that you didn't expect turns out to be true. Next.
Hi again. So, yeah, I was just going to add, kind of as a question, as part of our marketing for this conference in particular, we actually use Facebook, and one of the things that we do in Facebook marketing is actually look for specific tag words, and we actually, I was thinking we use Bill Burr as a tag word to market this conference. And Bill Burr is a guy who is well known for making jokes about men's issues, in fact, and dispelling the exact sort of things that we've been talking about all day. So he is doing essentially kind of what we're doing, except he's filling coliseums.
Yeah, I
right?
think we have a lot of comedians.
Yeah, so it's really amazing what he's doing. So I guess the question is, what's the difference between what's going on in these coliseums and what goes on in these sort of more political discussions?
Well, I guess the difference is that the power of humor is being unleashed in, at a comedy show. Things are acceptable that aren't normally acceptable. People can be more free, and they enjoy things they wouldn't normally enjoy. They enjoy learning in a way that they don't normally enjoy learning. Sometimes they find learning boring because it's presented to them boring. And I think educators should really be trying to make
Spice it up a bit.
their material more funny, because that's really how we evolved, I would say, to love knowledge, how we get these great brains of ours with our sense of humor, partly.
Okay, I wonder if there's anything we could take from that and like add into our own strategy as an organization, maybe, or something.
I just say try and hit that, you know, I did mention some caveats, you know, why you don't want humor, why humor can be a bad thing. But I say generally try to aim for that sweet spot between comedy and philosophy. Like it has to be tasty and nutritious at the same time, right? Don't rely on cheap gimmicks. Don't present things in a boring way. And you know, show spontaneity, show that you're real, because that's the common element there, right? You're getting to the truth, you're being real, you're exposing thoughts and deception.
I just want to say one thing. Maybe part of why Bill Burr is filling Coliseums and we aren't is because all he's really expecting people to do is see the truth in what he's saying and laugh. That's all he's expecting them. He's not expecting them to go out and change the way they do things or the way they think about things on a day-to-day basis. He's broken a whole bunch of taboos. He's like trampled all over them, and then people go home and they go back to their normal lives, right? And they aren't really expected to process it all and apply it in their real lives. There's no expectations on those people. It's just fun, right? And I think that that's probably, I don't think that we're ever going to be filling Coliseums by having me up on stage trying to make jokes. I'm not really that good.
I should also mention your presentation was very funny, though.
I hope in the proper way and not like funny, like, oh my God, look at that moron up there. You know.
But I should just add, though, we don't really know what those people, when they go after, you know, after they see Bill Burr or any other, you know, great politically incorrect comedians, what actually does happen when they go home. Maybe things are a little bit different. Maybe they did gain something out of it.
Yeah, but it's not an expectation, right?
There's no expectation, yeah. They're not being signed up for anything.
I just maybe add one comment here and try and put some language around how I'm thinking about what you're talking about. I think what you're referring to with Bill Burr and with comedy is the role of the archetypal fool or the clown. And that clown character, that fool character in the court, you know, we're talking about the Emperor's No Clothes, has the ability always to speak the truth. And they're the one person who can speak the truth who doesn't get killed. Right? And when we speak the truth in a sober environment like this and we share these ideas, it's not the fool's environment, but it's I think where knowledge and these things get shared and we can grow from them. So I appreciate your articulating all this and thank you for your presentation.